In every city, there is a suburban niche, a small piece of that 1950s American dream. Lines of houses with their perfect white picket fences and their perfect white, wholesome families. Never judge a book by its cover, and never judge a neighborhood by its outward reputation. Take, for instance, the community of Holly View. This tiny piece of Americana could be anywhere in the country, but this particular subdivision is decidedly cut directly from the cloth of the pre-civil rights era, right down to the secrets lining the floors and windows in place of carpets and curtains. That sort of thing is natural, the decay of values. That slice of the dream has been sitting on the windowsill for over 60 years. Some part of it was bound to grow mold. However, that corruption doesn't always stem from within the community. Sometimes there are far darker things lurking in the pools of luminescence that flood from the streetlights after the sun fades beyond the ever-present rows of trees that seem to insulate these kinds of communities from the rest of the world. Sometimes it's a mixture of mold and flies, ones attracted to the stench of decay. They are monsters that lurk and wait for fresh carrion. Sometimes the evil creatures that stalk the streets after dark aren't human. Holly View, a hot place in the summer and a warm place in the winter. People have air conditioning for two reasons: to cool their homes and to give them an excuse to stay indoors. The longtime residents don't much care for nosy folks driving through to examine their well-groomed lawns, but they cannot stand the people who get out and ask questions. Where did you get those roses? Who do you use for your lawn? Have you seen this man? He went missing in this area a few days ago. People, they would say to each other in their weekly meetings of the elderly minds. People ask too many questions, and poke their noses where they ought not to be smelling. These ladies, the matriarchs of the street, had twice as many skeletons in their collective closets as there were in the town cemetery. Despite that, they didn't fear for their own secrets. It was the secrets of what lurked in the dark that scared them. If people discovered the truth of Holly View, their reputations would be at risk. How would they be able to justify hiding secrets even greater than their misdeeds combined for so many years, they wondered. It all started in the 1960s. The houses were new, and so were their inhabitants. Families from all over town and country assembled to form the residency of Holly View. The houses were in demand, and so, when a vacancy occurred, it was sudden and unexpected. The sign reading "For Sale" appeared overnight, and no one could understand why anyone would want to leave the idyllic community. Then, a few months later, another one appeared. This one was not placed there by the homeowner, however. It, they would discover, was placed by the bank. The previous tenant, John Lawson, had been declared legally dead at that point. He had gone for a walk one afternoon and simply never returned. His friends would wind up burying an empty pine box. Word began to spread. There was a murderer lurking in the town, snatching up people and doing heaven knows what with them. It was then and there that the remaining residents decided to stop these rumors. They knew that the more light people shone onto the missing people's lives, the more at risk their lives would be of coming into contact with daylight. The widower, Annie McGee, was the most concerned. She didn't want people looking too far toward disappearances. Her late husband disappeared a few months before the first sign was dreamt of being erected. If she was lucky, the police would connect his case with the rest of the missings. If she was unlucky, his case would be looked into a bit closer, and she would receive a gracious present from the city in the form of a pair of brand new bracelets. In truth, tired of his drunken abuse, she had taken him out into the woods that bordered the suburbs and pushed him down an embankment. She was certain they would attribute it to an alcoholic misadventure, but his body was never found. Only a few shreds of clothing from where he had fallen remained. She was a murderer, but she knew that at least she wasn't alone on that street. Sarah Ann, she never troubled herself with a last name, was highly suspected of killing a young man with her car one night on her way home from an affair. However, her lover gave her an alibi. It spared her from certain jail, but it could not save her from divorce. Then there was Jane Johnson, who lived at the far end of the road. She took it upon herself to poison animals in the surrounding neighborhoods because, as she viewed it, those noisy little creatures kept her up at night. She was also trying to kill whatever it was she always saw across from her house, always standing on the sidewalk and just out of reach of the streetlight's illumination. If it was anything, she always repeated, it was a dog. Big, walking on all fours, and sniffing around. Years had passed since the spree of disappearances and misdeeds, though they never truly stopped. Jane kept poisoning local animals. Annie took a string of lovers who all met a similar fate. Sarah continued to commit herself to one and half a dozen of another, and people from around town who came to that area at night were sometimes never heard from again. Nowadays, Hollyview is as much the same as it ever was. Perfect white picket fences and perfect white wholesome families. People don't too often visit for obvious reasons, though, even during the day. The paint on those white picket fences appears immaculate from a distance, but get close enough and you can see all the cracks in their facade. The flowers in the lawn are bright and colorful, but behind the rows of zinnias and Gerber daisies lurk weeds too tough to kill, only capable of being hidden. The shadows cast upon the houses by the street lights often linger a bit after sunrise, well after the lights have shut off. There are monsters living in Hollyview. Some of them aren't even human.